the engineers present here, the technocrats, the future technocrats of India, who will be essential part of developing India. You will take it from being a developing country to the developed nation. Will you do it? Great. All the very best. And it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have Dr. Cheena Puri with us. It has been our Vice Chancellor's constant effort to bring something new, something from different fields. So last time we had coffee with Ali Rani, then we had coffee with Adam Richards, who was a martial arts expert, and now from martial arts we have moved to literature. And Dr. Cheena Puri is a renowned name in the field of literature in Rajasthan, and she has come up with a beautiful collection of poems called the Songs of Heart. So we'll be having a small talk, an informal plus formal talk with Dr. Cheena Puri over a cup of coffee.
I think it's a great moment. We have now a great writer, and potentially, will become even greater. And one day, she wins some award, then we will very fondly remember that she was here. The immediate purpose was that she has written a book of poems called Songs of the Heart. And me being a heart specialist, so obviously she touched my heart deeply. So I thought that we will have this chat with her. And the purpose is that there are two things why she is here. Number one, we want to understand from her that when we have to express our emotions. So some of us write long sentences, paragraphs. And there are some other people who write not those long paragraphs, but few lines which kind of rhyme with each other and then express the whole thought, which you would do in big paragraphs in few sentences of poem. So my immediate thing was to understand from her that what makes this individual different, that instead of writing paragraphs, they can summarize in few lines of the poems. So that is, I think, one of the things. The other thing I do hope is that she will be in some way involved with us in long term, and maybe she will teach you some English classes as well. So we will see if she can become a part of our faculty as well, a visiting faculty or something like that. We will work this thing out if possible. And so our thing is that, you guys also need many of us need some little bit help in English. Because English is a funny language, as you might have heard in a favorite Amitabh Bachchan movie. So I won't go more details into how funny it is, but anyway, I think with this I will hand the mic over to Mathu Saab to conduct this whole session, and we do hope to learn, and we do hope to get many things cleared. One particular thing, as I already said, was what is the difference between mind of a poet and a mind of a non-poet, to put it simply. So world can be divided into two groups. One is poets and non-poets. So let us see what is the difference.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you. So Dr. Cheena, would like to say something first, and then we can start.
Before we commence, I wish to first of all convey my deep sense of gratitude to Honorable Chairman, Professor B.S. Tomar sir, and your very dynamic cardiologist, Professor Sandeep Mishra ji, for organizing this book release function. I am greatly thankful for that. I also wish to thank all the faculty from the different departments of NIMS University, the students and the audience to gather together here. And I just wanted to share that since many years I was posted in a government college in Kotputli, so I had to cross daily from this road, and I used to wonder that how fortunate would be the people working in NIMS, because they are surrounded by these lush green Aravalli mountains and to be amidst nature. But then I thought about the poem Leisure, that we have no time to stand and stare, no time to stop and watch the beautiful sky and the birds, because every time our mind is working on something or the other, but nature is full of bounty, and you are fortunate to be surrounded in the spiritual environment of that green lush mountains.
Yes.
So you are all fortunate. So congratulations to be a part of NIMS.
Yeah. We are in fact very fortunate to be part of a university.
Yeah, and Aravallis happen to be the oldest mountain chain on earth.
Yes.
So I'm definitely very spiritual mountain.
It is. And working at a place or studying at the place which has so many people, so many cultures, so it's an amalgamation of cultures here with 450 courses, more than 24 colleges which are there in the college. And we have students from around 20 odd countries studying here. So it's an amalgamation of all the cultures here. So big round of applause for our university, guys. So, moving on, my first question which intrigued me is, as sir said, that there are two tribes, one is poets and other are non-poets. So when did you started writing, Dr. Cheena?
Yeah, this is the question which I have also answered partly in the preface to my book, because as children we don't come to know what we are doing or what we are writing. Children at young age, they develop talents for different creativity, maybe painting or writing. So I must have been a child of 8 or 10 years old, and I was very fond of, as I was saying, to play with birds and see how if you put the words in a particular pattern, they would sound like a song. So for me, arranging birds in rhyme, and I used to create these sing-song rhyme songs and write them down on square paper and collect them in a box. And it was a treasure for me because I was very fond of playing with the birds. And the subject matter of my poems used to be, because I was very curious like every small child, about the big moon shining in the sky. So how does the moon shine? Why has it been placed on the sky? And about the twinkling stars and the twittering birds and the fluttering butterflies. So that was the subject matter of my 2-line rhyme schemes when I was a small child. So my poetry has always been like, I never knew that I'm going to write poetry, or since very recently. And as I grew from a dreamy adolescent to a half-baked adult, I would say, because we never mature, we only grow in years, but we do not know whether we have become mature truly. So my poetry was always in stages and spurts and in phases coinciding with my own growth and my own experiences with the world. As my perceptions changed, my writing also kept on changing, and I used to maintain a diary and pen down whatever strong emotion I felt through the different phases of my life. And if there was a big gap, as all of you are students, you will find yourself in the career-making age. So our full focus is on our career and how we develop. So poetry took a backstage for many years, and then again it revived like a stream dried in the desert, and then it again revives. So the creative seeds never die within you. They are always there, only it requires the right time to come out and sprout again like a little sapling. So my writing career has moved through these different phases of growth and coincided with my changing perceptions of life. So that is how.
So I think boys and girls, I think ma'am has made a very important observation. When we are born, we have a lot of emotions. As we grow, we are in control of our parents. Later on, our school. Later on, our peer group and elders. So what happens is that we learn how to curb our emotions, and we learn how to think straight, so to say. So we start thinking logically, in sequence, and this is what that is hammered into us all the time. And the better we get into thinking logically, the better marks we score, and better our parents feel, and better our all other people, become proud of us if we do well thinking logically. So I think this street starts after somewhere in when the school starts, when we start learning, and there is a very famous kind of psychiatrist or psychologist called Lacan, and he says that this particular stage is called the father stage, where father teaches you symbols, and then you start learning those symbols, and then you move away from emotion to the symbolic world, and we start living in symbolic world. But I think what she tells us is, and what I have also experienced on my own, that there comes a time when you reach a certain level and then you start reverting back to your emotions. And I think this is the time when we start writing books, as ma'am has done, or you start, actually fulfilling your real dreams that have been suppressed early in the childhood because of all this schooling and all this, superego, as Freud calls. So there are three things: id, which is your instincts, and ego is your self-esteem, and superego is your parents or overall control that tries to control you and make you move in a certain direction. And when you break through this superego, then again your id comes into picture, and then you start realizing your real dreams which have been hidden so far. So your real dream would not be that I want to become a doctor or a teacher or whatever. Your real dream would be something else. And now you have forgotten your real dream. But once you reach a certain stage, some people reach this stage early, like ma'am has done. Some people take some time to reach this stage. But all of us reach that stage. And the purpose of this kind of session is to make you realize that there is a child inside you that is still there, which you probably have hidden, and that child you need to come into your close contact with, and then start living the dreams of that child. I think once you start doing that, then you will realize your potential on the earth. So I think she has made a very important observation, and I think we go on. Sorry for the interruption, but I thought this was very important for people understanding, why we are doing these sessions. Because these sessions we are doing to bring out the creativity inside you, the child inside you, which is still there and which you might have forgotten, but the child has not forgotten you. So you have to come into close contact with your child again, moving away from the superego.
I just want to add to what Professor Mishra has said, that one of my earliest and first poem here is Resurrection. So resurrection basically is a biblical word where Christ rose again after, he was crucified. But the word resurrection for me also means that the child, as he is saying, each one of us has that child, the naughty child in us, which we have to curb. Now you have matured, you cannot behave like a child. But that little child is the same. We may grow old, but you will find old people also having that twinkle in their eyes, or they have those wishes of a child. And what does that child do? That child is a very innocent person who is not familiar with the hatred and the envy and the jealousy and all the negative emotions which we experience as we grow. So how beautiful the world would be if we did not have to grow up or mature without losing that innocence of the child and retaining all the positivity of childhood.
Right.
The world would be such a better place.
Yes, it would be a better place, and we need to activate the child in us, and there are a lot of things. Dil to Bachcha Hai Ji. So that is not just a song or a movie. We have to realize it, and we have to move forward. Thank you, Lord. And sir, as you said, we are being schooled for things. So when you said twinkling stars, I could only remember Twinkle Twinkle Little. That is how we coached, because the creative juices have been suppressed. Right. So moving on. So this book is published. So how did you think of getting the book published? You had those small pieces of poems written and collected at the place. What made you publish the book, and how did you do that?
So this is a very interesting question, and it could be, a motive or an inspiration of many of you who might be writing a diary. I'm sure many of you must be writing something or the other. And you know what, like today, I'm on this side. So just last year, I was moderating a session for a poet who's 69 years old, and he brought his collection of poems first time, and the first poem he had written when he was in his he was a youth. So I thought, after I moderated his session, then I wondered that why not I pick up my old diary, though I have lost all those small square papers, but that diary I had intact with me. So most of the poems in this collection, they are from that earliest time. So maybe the emotion is very naive, it may not be mature, but I tried to retain that perception of that child who was, growing up as a dreamy adolescent, and whatever a young person feels, I have tried to keep that emotion intact. I did make changes, edited it for the purpose of publication, but I did not get away with the emotion. So maybe when you read, you'll find that some emotions are very simple. Maybe they are just about, a hurdle race, where I wrote about how life also offers you different challenges, and when you jump, it's a very simple, small poem. But I tried to retain the image of that child who thinks life as a hurdle, or a child who yearns for the beauty of nature. So after doing that moderation last year, this year I collected I found out all the old sheets of papers from my diary, and I tried to edit them. And this is a small collection. Other half is still waiting for publication. Maybe I get the full publication of the whole collection very soon.
So we look forward to it. Yes, thank you. Thanks a lot. And when we talk of English literatures and poets, a few words come to our mind like Keats, Shelley, Shakespeare, Wordsworth. Who was your inspiration? Who inspired you?
What sir is referring to, those students of English literature would recognize that he is talking about all the romantic poets.
All the romantic, because we are in a university,
So,
we talk about all those things.
So, what affects us most? What is romantic is not just love between boy and a girl. Romance is not what we just see in the movies. Maybe many people see romance as that. So, romantic word is basically, it connotes imagination. So, where does, as sir said that the heart, he talks about the heart as a pumping machine, so that is science. But the heart is also connected with our feelings and our emotions and how we imagine things. Reality is very different from imagination. So my poetry also, I relate, I didn't know when I was writing that, am I writing like this person or that person? We do not know. It's the collective consciousness as Carl Jung also calls about. We are placed in history at a certain point, we do not know, but history is repeating itself, and somewhere we are connected with some other people who have come before us. So the Romantic period in English literature, it was actually a revolt against the poetry of Dryden and Pope. You know, they were the poets who were the poets of logic and reasoning. That poem has to be in a particular rhyme scheme. You should not talk about your feelings or emotions. You should be very objective while writing poetry. So that was a very strict norm set by the poets in the 18th century. So when the poets he's mentioning, that is Wordsworth, Coleridge, Shelley, they revolted against this kind of strict norm set for writing poetry. And they said no, the subject of poetry should be the human person or the nature. So most of the poems written by Wordsworth, Coleridge, Keats, they are about nature that surrounds us. Like Wordsworth writes about in the daffodils, maybe you have heard about it. I wandered lonely as a cloud over hills and vales and saw a full stream of daffodils. So Wordsworth was he thought that nature provides a spiritual upliftment for him. For Shelley, nature was intellectualizing nature. So these romantic poets took their subject as nature, both human nature. Human nature means what we feel, what we dream, and also the surrounding nature. As in Hindu religion also we worship nature. So that if you go amidst the mountains, you will feel, or if you just look from here, you have a big campus, you can clearly see the clouds. So the clouds are like free floating. So my latest poem is about that cloud. I wish I could ride on the clouds. So I can imagine anything I want. So all the fiction writing is based on our imagination. Harry Potter is full of imagination. So I didn't know that I can be fit into the romantic kind of poetry, but yes, when I retrospectively look and I compare my own writing with other writers, I will fit into the romantic period of English literature. And I also feel that there is a spiritual upliftment, as if your soul is just leaping out and you feel bliss. So the bliss which has become so rare for us nowadays, like how many people who are commuting daily would think of stopping today and just climb these hills? we have no time, we'll be fired. Or there are so many things in our head that we don't have the time to just see the beauty of the nature surrounding us. I wish we had a day off. Sarvesh, it's not good enough idea. But I know that this is impractical. But what I mean to say is that enjoy your present. We keep living in some troubles of future or past. We forget to appreciate what is near us. So poetry also helps you to go through this process of catharsis. Catharsis is able to give vent to the piled up emotions which we keep holding on for some future time to express. There is no future time. COVID has shown us very clearly. Here and now, here and now. Keep this bird ticking in your head. Here and now. That's all we have. So poetry is just a way of giving vent to that desire, that feeling. And it gives you a feeling of getting over that piled up thing. All artists can do that.
I think she has made a very important point. And being kind of from science background, we like to classify things. So I will classify what she has said. And what I will say is that, look, 90% of people live in future. And nearly 10% live in past. We live in future because we are thinking what we are going to have in food, where we are going tomorrow, what course we are going to do once we get our degrees done, what are we going to do, what are we planning. So 90% people live in future, at least intellectuals. And rest 10% live in past. You think that fellow, he hit me badly last time, this one, I missed my, I did not do my homework yesterday. So something people will be thinking of their past all the time. And less than 1% think of now. And this is the problem. And I think once you go ahead and you look at art of living and you hear many lectures actually. Now what people are trying to say is start living in now, present. And I think once you start doing that, then you start enjoying whatever you are doing. Because once you look, okay, we are sitting in this, there is a quiet there is something going on, we are at peace, we are enjoying this particular thing. Once you go out, you see, okay, this is blue sky, how nice it looks, the weather is so good, we are not feeling very hot, we are feeling nice, and we are having a nice feeling. So you start living in the present. Okay, I am reading something, it is adding to my knowledge, I will, this is very good. And so, point is that instead of looking into future and all the time or looking into the past, if we start living in now, then you get in touch with your own emotion that is coming now. Now, how many of you are thinking what emotion you are having right now? I don't think anybody is thinking what emotion you are feeling. Because either you are thinking of future or you are thinking of past. You are not thinking of now. So once you start thinking of now, then you start appreciating life. And then the quality of life certainly improves. So I think one of the other messages I think which comes out from this talk is that start thinking what we are doing now, where are we now, and how we are enjoying the present, because we are disease free, we are nicely sitting, we don't have any problem, and we can enjoy a good talk, we can enjoy a good piece of poetry, piece of painting, something we can enjoy, music we can enjoy. So that particular enjoyment is the key, because it is not the destination that is important, it is the road that is important, where the road you take to reach that destination. If you enjoy the road that takes you to the destination, then you don't even need the destination, because you have already enjoyed the road that took you there. So I think that is the point she made.
I just want to, because I am observing that there are so many youth and the students sitting here. And I have also grown through that phase from being a student and having a job. What I really feel is that when I was young, I had all the dreams and the energy, but I didn't have the proper perception. I didn't have that maturity or the exposure to see the things as they are. So it's a very odd thing that we should have some kind of programs where the adolescent, and the adults who have so much passion and they can be, given the right direction, at that time they waver because of all the upheavals happening in their, the hormonal changes that are taking place, and there is nothing to look back to, or to, we are shy to talk to our parents or elders, and the peer group, they talk to each other. So this is the issue which I have, because I have gone through the same thing. I feel that all the youth, you have all the potential in you, and what you need to do is to channelize that full potential. And one thing which really helps is to connect to some kind of, spiritual practice. I will not say it's related to God, but it is like meditation. And meditation really helps you to focus all your thoughts and be most productive. You must connect yourself to, like I practice transcendental meditation, which can be done easily. I am not propagating anything. I am just saying that connect something to something higher. It will really help you to put all your goals in the, like the sun beams on the paper, if they are focused through the microscope, it will burn. So your energy is like that, but it's not focused. So I feel pity for that. Do we have a system where the youth, because they are going through all the changes, where they fall in love, they come out of love, and they don't understand what is happening with them, and all the hormonal changes. So I do feel I'm going astray from the topic, but I saw the youth and I wish to talk about it.
I think what VC sir said and ma'am said, that practicing mindfulness, being present where you are, focusing on the present, and also practicing gratitude about whatever we have in life. We should be thankful to the Almighty for whatever we have. But one thing you said very rightly, sir, that we generally think about the future. 90%, I can tell 100% of audience is thinking about the near future while they'll be enjoying the cultural festivities. I think all the students are focused on that. And after this session, so don't worry, we will continue with the Engineering Day program. And we have the foreign dignitaries also joining in this program. Ma'am, from inspiration, and that's a very intriguing title of your book, Songs of the Heart. How did you thought about the title? Can you tell us something about it, please?
So actually, when I was talking about, I was inspired by Wordsworth. So Songs of the Heart is basically, there is a divide between how you feel and how you think. Always you face this kind of a dilemma, where your heart means you feel you want something, but logically or reasonably there is a divide. So the songs of the heart actually signify that pure emotion, or that bliss, or that feeling which automatically, spontaneously overflows from your heart. You don't have to put a bar of logic or reasoning over it. So, William Wordsworth, in his when he started this program of having the romantic poetry, he wrote in his lyrical ballads preface that poetry can be defined as the spontaneous overflow of powerful emotion recollected in tranquility. So it seemingly may seem to be a paradoxical statement, that how can spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings and recollected in tranquility. Tranquility is when you are at peace. So basically, you may, like one of my poem also here, it talks about a feeling I had when I was a child. And now I can recollect about it in tranquility and pour my feelings for that. So Songs of the Heart focuses on all the feelings which we cannot curb. We want to let them flow freely, without inhibitions of reason or without thinking anything. So basically I give importance to that arena.
Okay, great. Right. Going through the poems, the collection, I have seen that one is on Indian Rail, the Chuk Chuk Gadi. I am not very sure the students have, how many of you have seen the steam engine? Any of you? Steam engine dekha? Kisi ne haath khade karo? Engineers?
How is the sound?
How is the sound? Chuk 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 chuk. So one of the that attracted us also, of my generation also. We used to love the sound of steam engine going to the railway station, and my father was in Indian Railways, so I used to travel in the railways a lot.
Yeah, actually Ashok Kumar wrote this song.
Yes.
Reelgadi. Each wale station bole ruk 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 ruk. So there is a song that is actually written and sung by Ashok Kumar.
Only.
That legendary, actor. Maybe they won't know who Ashok Kumar is, but like he is the Ashok Kumar is a actor who has actually spent longest time in Bollywood. So he is from his puberty. Actually, he started acting, and then he lived a grand old life of I think 90 years or something like that, and then he died. So about 80 years he spent in Bollywood in several roles as an actor, as a hero, as a father, as a grandfather, and so on. So he's a very interesting personality. But he wrote this song, Reelgadi chuk 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 chuk, beach wale station bole ruk 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 ruk.
Very good rhythm.
So what, I think you must have also been attracted by this chuk chuk thing. Can you take us through your journey of writing about Indian Rail?
So, this poem, as I was mentioning, that I was must be 7 or 8 years old, and a railway track used to cross near our home, and that steam, I used to rush and come out whenever I heard that song, and till it went away, I used to look at it with mesmerized eyes. So this feeling of this, it really enchanted me. And in this poem, I elevated this train to a level of a soldier, because the red and the black armor he is wearing, and the train is, it's called a metaphor. So metaphor is a figurative word for connecting two things. So the train becomes this soldier with his red and black armor, and it's moving with its steam in a fast pace, and it has no time to stop for you. But that little child is wondering if it can stop, and it can admire the beauty and the charm of that train. So this comes from my childhood emotion. And as I said, that poetry could be of what you have experienced in your childhood, and now from this perception I write it. So the words may be mature, but the feeling is of that child.
The child, yes. And as we spoke in the initial introduction, the child is important. Dil to bachcha hai ji. Sir.
So, actually this scene reminds me, I don't know, any Bengalis here? Raise your hand. So everybody knows Satyajit Ray.
I think everybody.
Satyajit Ray is the biggest filmmaker of this country. He was a Bengali, and he was the biggest filmmaker of the country. He could have won the whatever Oscar if those were started those days. And his most famous scene is from movie Pathar Pancholi. I don't know if anybody have seen this movie. If not, then I encourage you to see it with maybe Hindi or English translation, whatever you can get hold of. This is one of the most beautiful films ever made. It is within the first 10 scenes, best scenes ever made in whole of Bollywood and Hollywood. And it is archived there as one of the 10 most famous scenes. And his most famous scene is the same scene which Madam is describing. That there is a girl and there is his little boy, his little brother, and both of them are running and they are crossing a field, and then they hear the sound chuk 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 chuk, and they stop. For the first time they see a steam engine, and it crosses them in front of them, and they stand there. And this scene is one of the most famous scenes ever made in the history of film industry. So I encourage you to see this scene made by an Indian filmmaker, Satyajit Ray. Pathar Pancholi.
Probably one of the best we had.
Yeah.
Satyajit Ray. Yes, very true, very true. Yes, rightly said. And now your the book, Dr. Chand, speaks about rebirth, various tragic feelings of seasons, lost innocence, various hurdles in life, and the ultimate freedom. What inspired you to pick up these topics?
So as I was mentioning, this small collection takes you to the different phases of my growth. As a young child, as an adolescent, and as an adult, half-baked adult. I say half-baked because you are not fully mature. You think you have grown, but you are only half mature. So your perceptions also keep changing accordingly. You see the world differently as a child than as a grown-up. A child may fear the darkness, but the elder person knows that if we put on the light, it will brighten up the day. So this collection has all those emotions of my growing up phases. and you will find the confusion and the dilemma of a young person. You will also find the love of nature which I have, which I feel. So I love the winter season, and we are just going to enter into winter. So winter, I have written a poem about winter because I like it, and I have written about summer which I don't like. So both the emotions are. So similarly I write about what is my vision, which is the best thing I want to do. So you all must also write down what is the best thing or experience you want to have in your life. So what I want is to be lying down in a hammock near a river, the sky and the snow-clad mountains which I can view. So this is the best thing that gives me bliss. So I wrote a poem on that. So this is a collection of all the heartbreaks and all the emotions of different phases of my growth.
Okay. Okay. Great. Very nice. Very nice. Now we have engineers here. They are all about logics, mathematics, permutation, combination. It might look as an odd session to you, but this is basically why we are having this session, as sir also said, to stimulate your creativity, to stimulate the child in you, because we learn new things. You might be having, somebody of you might be having that sense of writing, that knack of writing. So please activate the knack of writing. Now at the last, can I request you to please read one of your favorite poems from the book? You can have this, please.
As a poet or as a writer, you are connected to all your poems in some way or the other. They are all like your children, so you have equal love for them. But this poem at page number, the second poem is titled Phoenix, Phoenix.
Phoenix. Yes.
You may have heard about it. It's a mythical bird in Greek mythology, which is supposed to regenerate itself from its ashes. As soon as it dies, mythically it is said that it will regenerate again from its ashes. So the spirit of revival, of resilience is indicative of this. So first I'll read the poem, then I'll let you know what I mean by it. I am a phoenix bird. Each time I die, I get a new birth. I have died many times, but only to rise each time from my ashes. It is not easy to die. It is very painful to burn in the fire of hell. It takes a long, dreary time to take a new birth. The death is slow, piercing. The tunnel of darkness is long, very long. Hope, feeble, steps languid with ache. But I have to move on, and I do keep moving, because I am a phoenix bird, destined to be born anew from my ashes. And with every birth is born in me a new self, stronger, surer, wiser, and deeper, that soars higher and higher, nearer to the birth giver. Thank you so much. So actually I don't know how many of you can, maybe if you read you can relate to it. So this poem I have written that many times in our lives we are going through phases of painful experiences. They are like tunnels of darkness. We do not know whether light will be there at the end of the tunnel or not. And as a young person, we also need succor or support from somebody. This poem actually talks about all the negative experiences one has in life, and then we do not know what will happen. But then I also had this feeling always throughout as I was growing up, that there is a light beyond the dark tunnel and God is with me. So I think to believe or put yourself sometimes into the hands of a spiritual power does good to your psychology. Everything is actually a person's mind, how you think ultimately. So it is the attitude and not the situation which makes you a winner or a loser, or how you go through life. So for all the youth here, whenever you find a dark tunnel in your life, a tunnel of darkness, hold on to the higher power, that you will come out stronger from there. And each time I had that phase of darkness, I grew stronger because of those experiences. Because a human life is ultimately what? The set of experiences which we go through. So they form us, they mold us, they reform us. Our perceptions also keep changing accordingly, but keep the positive side that there will be a light beyond the tunnel. So that is how the word phoenix talks about. It is this symbol of perseverance. A phoenix regenerates and revives and has the resilience. So on the note of hope and perseverance, I think we should.
So I can thank ma'am, but before that I would, this regarding this bird phoenix and resurrection and revival, I just want to bring to your notice, I don't know how many of you follow heavy metal hard rock, but if you do, then you might have heard of Megadeth and you might have heard of Dave Mustaine. This guy, he was the lead guitarist of this very popular band Metallica, and so he was one of the best bass guitarists of his times at a very young age, and he was in this band Metallica. But then he fell into this habit of drug addiction, and he got so much into trouble with this that Metallica band actually threw him out. And so he was removed from the band, and he was very disappointed. He thought to himself, and then he actually he gave up his habit of drug addiction. Very difficult to do, but because of his motivation to be in the Metallica band, he gave up his habit of drug addiction completely. So he basically totally gave up his habit, and then he went back to this Metallica band, and Hetfield was there, one of the lead players of Metallica group. But Hetfield was not very sure that he has left his habit, and he refused to admit him back to the Metallica band. So Dave Mustaine started Megadeth, one of the best heavy metal hard rock bands in the history, and this Megadeth started challenging Metallica. And the way they used to do was very active stage performance, where they would headbang. So I don't know if anybody knows of this heavy metal thing that you bang your head while this music goes on. So headbanging. So with headbanging, actually he developed a problem, a neurological problem, where his neck got stiff and he actually could not do any music at all. So he was admitted, he underwent surgery, and after this surgery, he got better, and then he again revived his band, again started doing the band, but then instead of guitar, he started focusing on vocals, and then he became one of the best vocalists ever. I don't know if you have heard Symphony of Destruction and Peace Sells Those Who's Buying. If you have, then you would know his vocals, and then after that, some time later, he lost his voice, and then he had to undergo another surgery to get his voice back. In between, all the band stopped and everything stopped. But then he got his voice back. Again, he started this band, and then he got brain cancer. And ultimately, he again got admitted. He got operated for brain cancer. And this year of COVID, 2019 or 2020, actually he won the first Grammy Award ever, after reviving and then resurrecting. So this reminds me of this bird phoenix, which was killed every time and then revived and then killed and then revived, but he never lost hope. And ultimately he won the Grammy Award and is still going strong. I think he's quite old now, maybe 60, 70, but he's still continuing to do his band Megadeth, and if you have time, sometimes you can hear it. So I think ma'am has very rightly said, this moment, what I wanted to say was that this moment is not unique. It is not only with Dave Mustaine or with Sheena or any other person. It is with all of us. All of us, have to at some point of time leave what we like and start something new. So this revival is very important. If you can build yourself, if you can restructure yourself, if you can, let us say, relearn yourself, then you will be successful in life. But if you hang on to whatever you have lost, whatever you did in past but you cannot do now, if you hang on to those failures, then you will live in past only and you will never be successful. So I think this message of revival is important for not 1 or 2%, but for each one of us, because all of us face the same dilemma. So with this, I think
Yes,
I hand over to
rightly
Dr.
said. Reinventing ourselves time and again is the key to success, and that is where we all want to reach. And we invite. Thanks a lot. I think with this we end this session. And thanks a lot, Dr. Srinaran. Thanks, and thank you, our Vice Chancellor, sir. He is an ocean of knowledge, and we are very blessed to have Dr. Sandeep Mishra, sir, as our Vice Chancellor with all the new initiatives which are being had. Thanks a lot.